Welcome to Modern Anarchy, the podcast exploring sex, relationships, and liberation. I'm your host, Dr. Nicole.
I tried to keep her quiet, but she's screaming inside of me. I tried to keep her hiding, oh, shut up. I tried to keep her quiet, but she's a wild, wild woman.
On today's episode, we have Jezebel. Join us for another Relationship Anarchy research conversation. Together we talk about the power of curiosity, learning to reconfigure relationships, and surrendering to the ego death of relationship anarchy. Hello, dear listener, and welcome back to Modern Anarchy. I am so delighted to have all of you pleasure activists from around the world tuning in for another episode each Wednesday. My name is Dr. Nicole. I'm a sex and relationship psychotherapist, providing psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, author of the Psychedelic Jealousy Guide, and founder of The Pleasure Practice, where I support individuals in crafting expansive sex lives and intimate relationships. Dear listener, Happy New Year! Wow, 2026. We made it here, folks. We made it here. And you know what? Each year, the embodiment gets deeper. The pleasure gets more ecstatic. And the orgasms get bigger and better, folks. Full of tears, joy, laughter, and mutual care in our communities. That's the kind of mutual aid I'm here for, okay? And I am so delighted that you are here, learning alongside with me, tuning into these episodes, and I have so much gratitude for Jezebel for joining me and for all of the people this last year who have committed to the relationship anarchy research over these last couple years. Truly, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's truly been a huge year of growth last year with 2025, with the podcast and the pleasure practice and all of you who have joined this community. And so thank you. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for tuning in. And damn, 2026 is going to be one powerful, badass year for pleasure. I can feel it in my pussy, and I hope that you feel it in your body. And dear listener, if you're ready to make 2026 your year of pleasure liberation, hey, the pleasure liberation groups for the sexuality cohort starting in February, they are open. This is a once-a-year container. Each year in February, I run a 16-week group course called Pleasure Liberation for Sexuality. This is the sex ed I wish I got. This is the sex ed we need. And these are the conversations, the neuroscience educational teaching that we all need to be able to speak more clearly our desires, advocate for ourselves, be so in tune with our body. And so, dear listener, if you want to join the group, there's only 6 spots. And I do this intentionally. I know many big therapists have huge groups, right? 200 people plus, whatever, all of that. That is not what I do. This is not what I do. I create a 6-person group where we can actually see each other, connect, form relationships, and grow, okay? And so if you want to join me for this year, it's the last couple weeks to sign up for a discovery call. And then it closes and you have to wait till 2027. So, dear listener, if you want to learn more about the groups, it's in the show notes below. And whether you join the group this year or the next, please know that I'm grateful you're here in community with me. I'm grateful that you're tuning in each Wednesday. I'm grateful that you are sharing these episodes with your friends and your community. It does so much. And I am so ready for 2026, y'all. It's going to be one powerful, badass year. And thank you for joining me along for the ride. All right, dear listener, if you are ready to liberate your pleasure, you can explore my offerings and free resources at modernanarchypodcast.com, linked in the show notes below. And I want to say the biggest thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. You are supporting the long-term sustainability of the podcast keeping this content free and accessible to all people. So thank you. And with that, dear listener, please know that I am sending you all my love. And let's tune in to today's episode. Dear listener, there's a space already waiting for you where you are invited to let go of every old script about sex and relationships and begin living a life rooted in your pleasure, empowerment, and deep alignment. I'm Dr. Nicole, and this is your invitation to the Pleasure Liberation Groups, a transformative, educational, and deeply immersive experience designed for visionary individuals like you. Together, we'll gather in community to explore desire, expand relational wisdom, and embody the lives we're here to lead. Each session is woven with practices, teachings, and the kind of connection that makes real transformation possible. And I'll be right there with you, guiding the process with an embodied curriculum that supports both personal and collective liberation. This is your invitation into the next chapter of your erotic evolution. Say yes to your pleasure and visit modernanarchypodcast.com/pleasure practice to apply. And so the first question I like to ask each guest is, how would you introduce yourself to the listeners?
My name is Jezebel Blessing. That is my chosen name. And I am a relationship anarchist. For the past 9 years, I've been practicing relationship anarchy and solo polyamory. I've been polyamorous for about 27 years, so a little over half my life. This was a conscious decision that I came to when I found that the constraints of monogamy were not working for me. And I decided to just remain single for the rest of my life so that I could have the freedom that I wanted. And then I met somebody and I fell in love with that person. And I said to him, I am not monogamous. And he said, that's okay. I'm polyamorous. And I said, what's that? And literally, that was the rest of my life.
Wow.
He introduced me to so many people, and good and bad, and up and down, and everything. It's just always been the way I love people, is to be open and free with that. In addition to being polyamorous, I identify as a queer pansexual. And in addition to that, I'm also a goth, which means I follow the gothic subculture. And my hobbies are I create beautiful gowns and festival wear from recycled materials. And that's what I do for fun. And I'm just a very eclectic person. I study magic. I also have a motorcycle. And so I just follow my bliss no matter where it leads me. I enjoy relationship anarchy because it gives me the freedom to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Well, so exciting to have you on this show today. What a gift.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate being here.
Yeah. So many years of knowledge and wisdom. I'm curious, even before we get into the RA question, what's one of the biggest things you've learned in all of those years of being polyamorous that you didn't know at the very beginning of the journey? I know there's probably so many things, but
there are so many things. I think the thing that I have carried with me was a few pointers. In my journey, one of my mentors, Morning Glory Zell, told me that I needed to be comfortable with the word no.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And I needed to learn how to accept that with grace and to understand that it wasn't a personal affront, and to honor somebody's no, because that would mean that their yes was also honest. That's probably one of the biggest lessons I've carried with me for 27 years.
Yeah.
And
Huge.
yeah, and that love really does come in all flavors,
Mm-hmm.
from deep, lifelong commitments to brief friendships
Yeah.
to somebody you meet at a party and you end up talking to them for 2 hours and it just vibes.
Mm.
That is love.
Mm.
That is a form of love.
Mm-hmm.
There, and that each part of that love is precious and beautiful and should not be discarded as, oh, well, that's not the real thing because it didn't last and they never called me. And
Mm.
so each love is a wonderful experience and we should just lean into that
Yeah.
because this
Mm-hmm.
world needs more of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's a bit of expanding that frame to see more intimacy and gratitude, really, right? Rather than just
Yes,
looking as love as one thing. It's seeing it in all of it. And when you start having that perspective, that frame shift, you feel the abundance of that love so much faster.
yes, for sure. It also comes
Mm-hmm.
from loving yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you love where you're at, you're not seeking validation through every person. You have your own strengths and your own weaknesses, and you're comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, that's a really huge foundation, right? When you have
Hmm.
more of that internal
Yes,
source, you're not always looking so much the external, some sort of balance between the two, right? That loving
for sure.
community and loving self, right? That harmony
Yes.
between the outer world and the inner world, I imagine
Hmm.
makes it much more of an easier process. And I appreciated what you had said about the no because yeah, personally, I mean, we know this in kink, right? That you, when you're playing, like you're the person you're playing with, you need to know that they have that no somewhere. And if they don't, that's the
Hmm.
scariest thing. It's really unsafe to play with someone who doesn't have that no and that limit. And I think that could be applied to all areas of life, right? In terms
Correct.
of trusting that that person has to be able to say no, even as just something as simple as like, do you want to go get coffee together, right? If that no isn't there, like you can't really trust them, as you said, otherwise, that they'll be able to advocate when you get to much more complex, nuance, often conflict that happens in every human relationship.
Correct. Yes. You need to have that trust of agency that each person has with personal responsibility for their choices.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you start getting into matters of the heart and matters of intimacy with the body.
Yeah.
How do you navigate negotiation if both parties aren't at the table at the same level of power?
Yeah. 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 I'm thinking about running down this line of conversation too before we get to the questions because I I remember recording with David Cooley, who co-authored Polywise with Jessica Fern and the book that they wrote together, and his advice was to wait to attach until you've seen people in conflict.
Oh, for
And
sure.
which is, yeah, a beautiful concept. How you do that in practice, I think, is tricky and nuanced. But even this, too, is something I've thought about more like, how can I wait to really get into deep connection with someone until I've seen them advocate for their no and trust that they have that? Like, it's,
Hmm.
like conflict is one area. I also want to see that this person has clear boundaries and like isn't afraid to express that. And so I'm curious for you, how do you gauge that when you're coming into new connections?
Well, a simple thing like negotiating your schedules.
Mm,
You
yeah.
want to see this person, you both have busy calendars, and you're both excited to see each other. Do they honor their prior commitments and still find space for you? Are they comfortable with saying, when you say, how about this time? They say, oh, that doesn't work for me. How about this time? Does that work
Mm-hmm.
for you?
Mm-hmm.
Or do they offer, help me,
Hi, Fat
or do
Cat.
they
Fat Cat
offer,
said, yeah.
Speaking of negotiations of space,
Exactly. 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 She has no boundaries. It's complicated.
but do they offer a variety of times when they're available and we can find somewhere to connect that's comfortable for both of us? Do they rush to fit me into their schedule and then don't show up on time or
Mm,
you see
yeah.
that's where those nuances come in. How do you show up for each other in that space and I allow people to organically show me how they show up. Where are they at? Where is their life at? Do they have space for this new connection? Or is this not the right time and maybe we'll circle around later?
Mm-hmm.
I try to do the same thing for the people that I connect with in creating space for them, showing up on time, being ready to 100% connect with that person. Maybe take a few moments to decompress from the day
Yeah.
before I meet with them,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's a deep breath in the car. You
Yeah.
know,
Yes. Yeah.
that kind of work has been something that I've been perfecting over these past 9 years of relationship anarchy and learning how to bring my authentic self to the table as my relationships progress and I live more of this lifestyle and this love style in a more authentic way.
Mm-hmm. 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 This is so much of the wisdom that I appreciate, when you've been doing it for so many years, the nuance of these things that you see, the green flags that you're looking for, right? Are they
Hmm.
attuning to the other people in their ecosystem? Do they have the ability to like regulate and show up with presence, right? These are the things that I don't think I knew at the beginning of my journey, right? To look for as like green flags. It's like, oh, I'm attracted to that person. I'm attracted to this person. Cool. Like, let's explore it all, right? And so coming
Yeah.
to a bit more of like a nuance of like, okay, wow, I've ate a lot at that buffet and I have a stomach ache. Like, how do I do this with a bit more like balance and making sure we got some
Oh,
nutrition and some sweets, like the whole thing, right?
and that takes a lot of self work as well, a lot of
Yes.
self reflection.
Yes.
I have a long history of being attracted to people
Oh,
who exhibit narcissistic
oh
traits
no.
because I had so much of an emptiness inside of myself that was looking for someone to tell me what to do and what was
Sure.
right. If I only do these things, I will be perfect. So every person that came along who told me, well, if you just did this, then you'd be perfect, I would internalize that and try to mold myself around it. And then later find myself angry and resentful at them. But
Mm,
really, I was angry and resentful at myself
mm,
for not being authentic.
yeah.
I took a couple of years of off dating
Nice.
and reflected if this was during the pandemic, so it was kind of convenient.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I took a couple of years off, reflected a lot on myself, did a lot of self work, came back, fell right back into the same trap again.
Mm,
But thankfully, this trap didn't last very long because I had done that self work. And thought, wow, here I am again. Why
mm-hmm.
am I, why am I here? I'm
Right.
here because I'm not listening to my authentic self.
Mm,
Okay, so we need to get away from this person and then get back to our authentic self. And then once I got back to that place and started listening to that authentic self, taking self responsibility, responding to my independence and my unique connections from my own space. And if it didn't work, it wasn't a failing. It was
mm-hmm.
just not a compatible
Right.
mesh.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yep.
And showing up that way stopped the narcissist trap.
Mm.
They
Mm-hmm.
stopped showing up in my life. Look at that. Oh my God,
Mm.
it's amazing.
Magical.
Yeah, very.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad that you are deeper in that practice to notice, and it sounds like in a new space. It reminds me a lot of the practice of meditation, right? When we're meditating, we say that it's never that you turn the mind off, it's more that noticing, right? And so
Hmm.
in the growth journey, it's often that spiral, right, where eventually in the spiral you hit that same point again, but maybe a little deeper. And this time, the thought's still there. Maybe that narcissist is glowing in attraction, but we at least recognize we're deeper in the spiral, and we can recognize, take a bit more of that observer's mindset and say, yeah, we're not going to go down that anymore, right? And it's that
Yes,
awareness.
yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes just saying to that person, disempowering the situation and
Yeah.
saying, I hear you and I understand that that's your perception of what would be perfect for you. If that's what you need from me, I'm not your person.
Yeah.
And how do they handle that? Speaking
Yeah.
of perceptions and green flags, how do they handle my no, my boundary? No, I don't want to do that. And they say, but if you, well, that's my answer.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have to be mindful that I don't do the same to them.
Right, exactly.
It's never a one-sided street.
No, no, no. It's a very humbling journey for sure. And
Hmm.
yeah, I know we're getting into it deep here, which I love. And I'm also curious. I'm curious for you. How do you define relationship anarchy?
Let's see. Well, that is, wow,
I know.
defining relationship anarchy is like trying to name a many-headed beast.
Yeah. Hmm.
I would say, let's see, I made some notes because I knew
Beautiful.
that this was going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I would say that relationship anarchy for me is a definition. There's a freedom of choice.
Mm,
Anarchy offers you options and choices and what works for you, what works for your community, what works for the place that you want to be in life. And that can be an ever shifting puzzle, or it can be a static foundation with a kaleidoscope of different backgrounds. The other part of relationship anarchy that feels like relationship anarchy for me is the responsibility of being an independent person with overlaying interdependence.
mm-hmm.
I myself take care of my own financial freedoms, keep a roof over my head, clothes on my back, and gas in my car. That's my responsibility to take care of that. I take care of my health. I take care of my mental wellness. There are many people and there are many factors that help support that, but it's up to me to foster and continue those relationships that keep that strength of independence going. And that's part of relationship anarchy. And then there's the other part, like an underlying factor of anarchist thought is the power dynamic is more of an equal playing field. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. We all have something to contribute. How do we come together to have this responsible independence so that we all have enough to share with others?
Mm-hmm.
And that is the part of anarchy
Mm.
that I find so fascinating. A relationship anarchy is how do we be good on our own but better together?
Mm.
and sharing in that way is just the beauty of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I love that word of interdependence to describe that, right? To
Yeah,
understand that we're
yeah,
all connected in this, and our ability to be strong as an individual is so deeply connected to the community. That's really what I
yes.
love a lot about the training and the lens and theoretical orientation I went down for psychology was the feminist orientation that came around in the 70s when women started being able to go to programs in America. And so they brought in this like whole new lens. It's not that long ago, folks. I always try to remember that.
Yeah,
It's not that long ago.
about the
So
time I was born. So
yeah, exactly, right?
a
And
little bit
so, yep,
a
and
little bit
that's
earlier than that, but yeah.
and so I try to remember that historical fact. That's when women were starting to make field like contributions in the field in terms of theoretical views around feminist thought specifically, because there were some other folks, but the research I had done with the relational cultural theory, they would say that the self is formed by our connections, right? And
Hmm.
so even this language that I'm saying out of my mouth, I didn't write this or create this. I learned it through social dynamics, right? And so everything I've ever learned in my entire life that forms this consciousness I have is created through outside relationships that I have. And then, of course, my internal combination, the way I swirl all of those together to make a beautiful, experience. And so
Yes.
I love that word of interdependence, right? Where it's like there is no complete individual. We're always in connection. And in that, yeah, how do we resource ourselves so that way we can also share with other people, as you said, like being strong on your own, but even better together. I think that's a really powerful frame to look at it, right? Because we're stronger when we're in that collective and we can give back to other people who maybe don't have as much resources or access or privilege and all those sorts of ways.
Correct, correct. And I think that is why this podcast culture, the internet culture, the free and open sharing of resources and information is so vital
Yeah.
to global consciousness. I love hearing from other cultures. I
Yeah.
love hearing from other backgrounds, choices that people make, and why they made those choices, and where they sit in comfort in that place.
Mm-hmm.
There's a beautiful sharing of understanding of our trials and tribulations as human beings
Mm-hmm.
that transcends borders, that
Mm-hmm.
transcends languages at this point, because we have wonderful tools that will allow us to communicate with people that we would not have been able to, say, 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
um, to bring in understanding. Just in the past 10 years, I understand so much more about the cultures that would have probably frightened me
Mm.
several years ago,
Yeah.
because all I was told was what I saw from the news. And relationship anarchy goes beyond just sex and intimacy and romance. It's also relationship anarchy of branching out, expanding, breaking down the borders in order to listen to what everybody has to contribute. And I think that is one of the overwhelming dynamics of relationship anarchy that maybe doesn't get touched on as much.
Mm.
Most people just want to talk about sex and romance and
Mm-hmm.
all that juicy stuff. And that's great.
Yeah.
But there is a relationship that we have, that we can have when we start breaking down barriers and stop being afraid to be wrong, to be right, to be somewhere in between, just to share ideas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, a big part of relationship anarchy is removing the prioritization that we place on sex and romance, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So it makes sense to be having
Yeah.
that level of conversation about all the other types of intimacy, as you said at the beginning, right? There's
Hmm.
so many ways that we are connected to folks, and that intimacy is right present in our lives. And so when we get out of the frame of only sex and romance, which I'm super passionate about talking about because Lord knows that is a very sticky place for so many of us, myself included, in that like lifelong learning in that area. And
Oh, for sure.
also, right, exactly. So that's where I'm like, I'm honing in. That's my focus. And also, their relationship anarchy as a practice is so much deeper than that. And so if we only look at that, we're only seeing a part of relationship anarchy rather than the whole practice itself, which, as you're saying,
Mhm.
is much more wider, looking at Platonic connections, looking at the global connections, looking at all the power structures. I've even had people who talk about climate change as a part of their relationship anarchy practice, which makes sense
Mhm.
to me. Like, look at the relationship to the earth that we live
Mhm.
on, and then what are the power structures that are impacting our relationship to the land and to earth, right? And so I see all of that as connected. I've seen some people talk about relationship anarchy to spirituality, which is also a
Mhm.
place. Look at the power structures that have colonized different areas based on a he, him God, a
Yes,
white he,
very
him
much.
God often. Wow. And so like there's so many power structures that you could get into that are way beyond just sex and romance for this conversation.
Oh, correct. And that could go on for days.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Isn't that beautiful? That's
It
why
is. It's lots of fun.
Yeah. Sometimes when people ask, like, what is relationship anarchy? I'm like, well, what is it not? Let's maybe.
That's probably a shorter list.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And sometimes that is very common in the anarchy philosophy rather than trying to define it. They're like, well, it's not this, not that, not this or that. So I think that's definitely in line with a lot of anarchist like lineage in terms of defining it by what it's not, because it is so expansive in that sense. And so like it's definitely not like hyper individualism, or control over people and power structures in that way. And so removing those things, it's much much more expansive. And so how do you practice relationship anarchy? What does this look like in your daily life and your lived experience for you?
I like to practice relationship anarchy by constantly remaining curious
Mm,
and open to learning. There needs to be for me this way of organically observing what is going on around me in order to create better relationship with the people and things that share my life. I don't want to get locked into a dogmatic way of thinking that only this thing or only this way will do. I practice with being open and honest with myself. I keep an ongoing open dialogue with the people that I work with and share intimacy with and my friends. How do we learn from one another? How do we help one another learn? This is all part of this ongoing practice in relationship anarchy of honoring ourselves as individuals and honoring our community as a organic, growing being.
mm-hmm.
We have a practice of sharing without fear.
Mm,
We can open up and say, talking about this is very scary for me.
mm-hmm.
And that communication, that honest communication, means that the people around you can hold space for that. Say, I see your fear. You can let go of it. You're safe with me. And this practice has brought me to a strength that I never knew I had, a strength in that vulnerability that offers support for people who are also vulnerable. And so that practice of relationship anarchy brings us back to that honesty with self and with community
Mm.
that is so amazingly liberating,
Mm.
that I didn't know existed before. Because
Mm-hmm.
before I existed in a place in my mind where if I show vulnerability, that means I'm weak.
Oh,
That means I'm not honored.
yeah.
That is that place of that rigid dogmatic thinking that if you're not empowered, then someone will have power over you.
Mm-hmm.
A relationship anarchy doesn't offer that. Relationship anarchy is a place where the power dynamic, the power structure is broken and crumbles into a more smooth foundation for everyone to have a voice, for everybody
Mm-hmm.
to have strength.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a big part of my practice of relationship
Yeah.
anarchy is how do we dismantle this culture of power over
Mm.
and create a foundation of power with? If that, I think that makes sense.
It
I
does to
hope it makes
me.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for coming onto the show and sharing your voice to do that, right? Like,
That
yeah.
that is the main reason I took the invitation is
Mm.
I felt like I've been doing this long enough that I have some valuable things to share,
Yeah.
and I want people to understand that they don't have to know everything in
Mm.
order to live their life the way that they want to. It's okay to it's okay to experiment. It's okay to fail. It's okay to pick yourself back up and do it again a different way.
Yes.
It's it's all to choose your own adventure.
Yeah. And that's a part of what it means to be human, right? I think sometimes
Mhm.
we look to other people, myself included, as if they have it all figured out, and no one does. Right? We get
Yeah,
a little
that's
bit
a
more
great.
yeah, we get a little more clarity as we go through it, like, okay, but
Hmm.
at the end of the day, you'll still, be crying one day confused at what's happening. And if you're not, like, what does that say about your life if you're not hitting points where you're questioning and growing and learning, right? Like to be in that sort of stagnancy where you're not continually unpacking things, it feels
Hmm.
to me that feels like dead, like quite literally think of like stagnant water, and stuff grows in
Hmm.
that too. But for me, it feels like death. And so I hope that I'm still getting to the end of my life going, wow, I learned something new today, like because I'm growing in that expansion process, and so I
Oh,
think
correct. Yes.
yeah, it's so important to be humble about that. And I think that's also where it's really powerful to share, like you mentioned, your vulnerability with other people to say, I'm confused about this, I'm scared about this, I'm unsure of this, and to find strength and the ability to name that and to know that you'll be okay in that. Oh
Hmm.
man, it's there's that word vulnerability hangover. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I've experienced that.
Me too, just recently, like just crying like a baby and next day being like, wow, that was a lot, and it's a
Yeah.
part of the process, right? And I think it's beautiful also too that there are people that we feel safe enough to even go to those spaces with. Because for myself, I've noticed like depending on what I'm talking about, if I'm talking about something really complex, if I'm in a safe relationship, it's almost like emotions bubble up without my control. Like they just start to come up really strong in a ways where if it's a newer connection, my body's like keeping it kind of down, my psyche. The second I'm in like a deep, loving, caring relationship, I'm talking about something heavy, I will cry like the biggest baby. And it is intense. It's intense. And I'm like, damn, what is this connection pulling out of me? You know, and it's the
Yes,
safety that creates that vulnerability.
it is. It is. I've had that recently. I met someone and fell for them and felt really
Mm,
strong emotions for
beautiful.
this person. And it is beautiful. It's
Yeah.
also terrifying.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Real.
Especially after because I am a very deep loving person. And when I feel that for someone, that sparks all kinds of internal dialogue about, are you safe? Are you going to get hurt?
Mm,
Are you giving too much?
mm,
Are the just that internal dialogue
right.
of all of those protectors that go on inside of me were really freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
eventually I gathered all of those protectors up and I said, okay, okay, kids, I understand what you're trying to do and I hear you and I appreciate you, but we're going to fall in love and we're going to trust that even if this person turns out to be a dirty, horrible, cheating, awful person, which
Mm,
they didn't, but
good.
even if they did, we can still pick ourselves up and get on with our life
Yeah.
with and just be richer for the experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. To know that even if that worst case scenario comes out, right, you're strong
Hmm.
enough and you have a web, a community of people that will be there with you. And so you're not alone. You're never alone, right?
Hmm.
The different
Yes.
things that you're connected to, again, the earth, the people, my cat, right? Like all these different things are connected to. So you're never alone, right? And so to trust that in taking that leap of faith where we gauge if they have their no, we gauge their conflict skills, all that sort of stuff. And even if you feel like you did the perfect vetting, because what does perfect mean? But even if you feel like you did it, stuff happens, right? And so if that
And people can
happens,
surprise you.
oh yeah, people surprise you years in. Years in, you're like,
Yeah,
what is this? Because people
that is for
change.
sure.
People
And we
change.
all do. And you change too.
Yep. Yep. Which was making me think about just our human desire for control. You know, we want to know what's going to happen to us. We want to know what's
Hmm.
next. We want to know where our
Hmm.
safety is. And so the amount of control we want. And I think often that's where we can find ourselves getting into narratives of a certain way of relating and finding control in that. Because if we follow this path, it's very clear and controlled and defined, and nothing is going to change. But that's just not
Hmm.
how life works. That's not how humanness works. Change is the only inevitable, right? And so I think that requires a big embrace of grief. I can't
Hmm.
control all of this. I can't control this person. And there may be things I wanted out of this path that change and evolve. A vision maybe I had of where I was going with my life is no longer happening. And how do you sit with that
Hmm.
grief, the acceptance of that, and then the ongoing consent of it all, right? Because when you're in relationship with people, just because you said, hey, we have this vision of doing A, B, C, and D together, that's an ongoing conversation of consent, right? And so
Right.
you have to be able to go through that with folks. And just as much as in sex, right? That when someone says no, we accept that and we embrace that and we say thank you. Like, I think it's hard when you've had a vision of maybe, some clients that I've worked with have had visions of living together. And then one person decides that they don't want to live together anymore and they want to stay in deep relationship. And that is heartbreaking for the other partner who is not thriving with that, right? And so how do you embrace that moment of consent, that that's what your partner is asking for? And the tender parts of us who, when we hear that, say, I'm being abandoned. And so you want to lash out at that person who's not trying to abandon you, but maybe just live in a different way of relating. Oh, like, what a moment of tearing open your heart to sit in that complexity, the grief of the vision, the ongoing consent of it all, and to not blow up the whole system because of how hard it can be to sit with that and how much it can feel like abandonment in the moment. That is, wow, those are really, really deep skills to learn in the complexity of relationship anarchy.
Yes,
Wow.
for sure. And God's blessed the amazing therapists who have been in my life to help me navigate that and to come into practice. I think the greatest tool one of my therapists ever gave me was internal family systems,
Yes,
the
absolutely. Yep.
IFS system,
Mm-hmm.
because I have all of these voices in my head all of the time. I have a Greek chorus with costumes and props that are in constant dialogue with one
Yeah.
another. And IFS gave me the skills to be able to stop being the observer
Mm-hmm.
and just being drug along through the mental play in my head and start being the director.
Mm-hmm.
But when disappointments come up
Oof.
in relationship anarchy, one of the beauties of this system is to be able to say, I hear you, I understand you, I need a moment to wrestle with some of my desires and expectations and come back to this conversation and to this negotiation in a place where I feel I'm not reacting from my needs and my fears.
Mm-hmm. 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 So
In
hard. So hard.
in a more traditional setup, you have this somebody's shattered the magic mirror and the kingdom is going to fall apart.
Mm.
So everything that you dreamed was your fairy tale life is now being destroyed. There's no room for rebuilding until you've slain the proverbial dragon
Mm.
and gotten back to that fairy tale again. In relationship anarchy, the magic mirror has been shattered, the kingdom is falling apart, and instead of suddenly seeing everything as an enemy in order to stop you from having your magic kingdom and your happily ever after, you would look at this as possibly saying, well, that's not the kingdom we have anymore. So how do we rebuild?
Mm-hmm.
What is the new kingdom going to look like?
Mm.
What is the new power structure going to look like? How can we come back to this in a way that we can both survive and thrive? Maybe it's a parting of ways for a while. Maybe it's a restructuring of the relationship. I don't know. It's fluid. It's changing. It's frightening,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not the end of the world.
Mm.
And that was such a big leap for me in
Mm.
relationship anarchy to not see a breakup or a de-escalation
Mm.
as a failure,
Mm-hmm.
as something must be wrong. It's not happily ever after.
Right.
And coming back to that relationship again and saying, well, we still have a relationship. We still care about each other. It's just not the way that we thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we need to do in order to support one another through this transition? Which used to, that transition used to mean break up, never see that person again.
Yeah.
Everybody posts stuff on the internet and says horrible things about each other,
Yeah.
and then nobody talks again.
Mm-hmm.
Now in relationship anarchy, it is our relationship is transitioned. It's something new. It's a friendship. Maybe it's a more casual thing. Maybe we honor each other and see each other once or twice a year. Somebody has to move away. But those structures, that connection, the threads that connect us just got longer.
Yeah.
And instead of breaking entirely. And I think that that's a part of relationship anarchy that I really value,
Mm-hmm.
that we can change things without having to destroy them.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's why I love the word reorienting, right?
Hmm. For
We're not
sure. Yes.
breaking up, right? We're not ending this. We're reorienting. We're finding new ways of relating, right? Even if that means, as you mentioned, a lot of distance in the connection. And I think that takes so many skills, as we had spoken to, with grief, with letting go of control to a vision, and embracing what is in the here and the now, right? Rather than the past. And the amount of regulation, self regulation it takes, or maybe I don't like that word, the amount of connection you have to have.
Introspection. Yeah.
Yeah, like introspection and self connection with your body to be able to ground yourself, right? In
Yes.
terms of, because I want people to feel their experiences. Of course, regulating is kind of a complex word of like what's allowed and not allowed, in terms of regulating the body. But I just want people to be embodied so that we can have those sorts of changes in our life without, like you're saying, blowing it all up or starting campaigns against people
Hmm.
of like, everyone hate this person, they're horrible, right? The whole thing. Which is obviously a very nuanced topic of like, what do you do when there is problematic actions happening within your community, and how do you hold people accountable if there
Hmm.
are problematic actions happening? Like, it is important to share within the community for some sort of accountability model, right? So I think there's a fine line between starting a campaign against someone and also, hey, this person has done harm in the community, we need people to know. And that's a fine line I could probably write a book on, like, how do you find that out? You know what I mean? That's complicated.
You
But yeah.
probably could, especially current
Yeah.
in our current system of knee-jerk reaction and cancel culture.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. Yes. And it
but
probably
again, that could be another podcast entirely.
totally. And it's probably a lot about introspection, like in terms of like how
It
activated are
is.
you from other stuff versus the reality of the situation. But that's, oh yeah. So I'm hearing for you this like spaciousness of possibilities with relationship anarchy. And so I'm curious, why do you practice relationship anarchy? Why is this something that calls to you?
This called to me, oh my gosh. Well, this really called to me because even though I've been openly polyamorous for so many years, there was still such an underlying foundation of monogamy culture, or as I like to use the term, the couplehood cult. This cult of being coupled, that you have your primary relationship, and then from your primary relationship, you are allowed, and I use air quotes with that,
That word.
allowed to explore other possibilities because you have this foundation of the couple. Well, that was far too restrictive for my whimsical heart. I, I don't have whatever that gene or desire or DNA makeup or however that
Mm-hmm.
happens in order to have only or prioritize one relationship over the other.
Mm-hmm.
For me, love is a many splendored thing. I have love for everyone and I want to explore those connections with freedom and security. So I came to relationship anarchy after a divorce because I had tried everything, including legal marriage.
Mm.
And I met someone during that time that I was married, just as I was contemplating divorce. And again, another partner in my life
Mm.
said, "Well, I'm solo polyamorous and a relationship anarchist." And I said, "Well, what's that?" And he started to open my eyes to this idea that relationship and polyamorous solo polyamory can be an individual journey
Mm.
and not just a journey of couplehood.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how it kind of came about and why I practice relationship anarchy
Mm.
is I had always craved that individual freedom and sovereignty over my own life, over my
Yeah.
own choices and my own decisions, and breaking free from that valuing or, yeah, valuation of being a couple
Mm.
felt so much more authentic to me
Mm-hmm. Mm.
that
Mm-hmm.
because we have a culture, we have a culture that values pairing up.
Yeah.
And how do we honor the individual? How do we elevate our personal freedoms
Right.
and create a relationship with ourselves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a modern day culture that really values, well, we have a Western white modern day culture that really values that, right? Like you can look around the world and that's not the case across the world. And then you can also look to historical beyond the last like couple of 100 years, right? And you're like, oh, okay, okay, wow, okay, got it. You know,
Hmm.
so like this, it's always funny, you know, like this period of time we're in terms of human history is such a small, little, tiny, but just like, you know, it was only 50 years ago women are coming into school, you know, we forget
True.
how close that was, you know. And so it's like this period where we're so nuclear is actually such a small little blip, but it feels like everything because it's the water that we're living in right now, right?
Correct. And we have
Yeah.
and we have these social cues
Yep.
of rewards for your complacency
Oh yeah.
in that.
Tax
The
benefits, yeah.
tax benefits, you get a big old diamond on your finger.
Right.
Um, you get your tax benefits, financial benefits,
Even
healthcare
death,
benefits,
who takes,
death
yeah.
benefits,
Yep.
everything from cradle to grave.
Yep.
You want to be a parent, you need to be partnered.
Yep.
There's
To
there's
one,
all
not three. I
yeah,
think three
not
partners would
three
be wiser. You know, let's have
would
three adults in there, but what? Pff, no,
at
bad.
least.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
bad, you know?
but no, I mean, who's the actual mother? Who's
Oh,
the
Jesus.
actual father? It's like, no, 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 no.
Yeah. If
This
the two,
this this child is loved. That's all
right?
it needs.
If two is better than one, let me tell you, three is better than two. You know, like that's just basic math. Let's keep going. I
Correct,
know, it
correct.
kills me. It kills me.
But
I
this is
honestly, go ahead. Yeah.
no, this is part of that nuclear couplehood
Oh,
cult
yeah.
that is so interwoven into our culture, and it's taken me a long time to deprogram myself.
Sure.
Even now, I still have twinges.
Oh,
I still
totally.
have, oh, I still have those moments, especially
Hmm.
when the people I love hit certain couplehood milestones with
Mm,
their partners. And while I don't want those things for myself, that doesn't mean it doesn't sting
sure.
to see them hit those milestones and be like, ah, what does that mean for me?
Mm,
Does that mean I now have a lesser position in their life?
mm,
And those are uncomfortable conversations,
yeah, definitely.
but
Definitely.
conver but valuable conversations,
Yeah.
vulnerable conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And it's like any exposure therapy. I feel like the deeper I go into the practice, then less and less I care about those societal things. The sting of that
Hmm.
becomes less and less, where I'm just like, you know what, I'm gone so far down the rabbit hole. I'm just gonna keep going deeper. Like, like the surface level is getting further and further away, where I'm like, yeah, I'm not really looking for like a taxed marriage here, like, and that being the highest significance of my life, that I would be legally by the United States government. That's what I want for my, like, if anything, I want that
Correct.
further and further away from me. Like, what, if I'm going to get tax benefits, I get that. But like, that is, for me personally, that's not the highest form of love, to be like sanctioned by the US government. That's, so like,
Correct.
so yeah, so just
Correct.
the further I go, I'm like, yeah. I feel like, one of my biggest goals for my career, two of my biggest goals for my career would be to end rape culture and put as much end to that as I can in my lifetime. And then to
Yeah.
also invite the world to realize we all have multiple relationships. And I think
Hmm.
that's the frame of relationship anarchy. Is it's not about sex, actually, right? You could have sexual fidelity and have sex with one person for the rest of your life and be a relationship anarchist. You don't have to fuck multiple people. If you do, beautiful. Hey, I do too. That's so great. But you don't have to, right? It's more so about that community embrace. And so I think that frame begins with the reality that we all already have multiple relationships, every single one of us on this planet, because when
Hmm.
you're a baby, you cannot survive. We're social creatures and we need that for our mental health. And even if your relationship is to the earth, to the plants, to the animals, right? Like, you're in deep relationship, right? And so what does it mean to start
Hmm.
from that frame? I think it opens so much more, because then we're looking at each individual relationship and how much intimacy, what sort of actions do we want in our life, and how do
Hmm.
we want to connect with that person and that individual connection, rather than sometimes even the polyamorous lens can be like a monogamy plus lens, as you spoke to, where it's
Hmm.
like, instead of just one partner, now I have two, and these are my partners, and the rest of the people are like not my partners. They're like not important, but these are my partners, right? And so
Yes.
it's like, okay, this is where the relationship anarchy frame comes in. Again, it's not about how many people you fuck. It's about the fact that you already have multiple relationships, and can you sit in that regardless of how many people you're kissing, having sex with, or whatever. And so I'm curious for you, how has that changed your practice of intimacy coming in with this frame?
Coming in with that frame, my relationship to intimacy has changed. If anything, it has expanded.
Yeah.
It expanded in a way that I can feel like I can have intimate relationships, even if we're not getting naked together.
Yeah.
That intimacy and the relationship with intimacy has opened up a glorious garden of
Mm,
delights that
beautiful.
makes every single person around me a new flower, a new fruit, a new feast of the senses. That doesn't mean that I have to consume those things. Like if you're walking through a garden and you see a beautiful flower and you're like, that's a beautiful flower. I wonder if it smells nice.
Mm,
Oh yeah, it smells nice. Oh, what a lovely thing. And then you walk away from it and move on to the next thing. You didn't pick it off of the place where it was growing,
mm,
so the next person can enjoy that flower. You're not I'm not constantly going around consuming people and consuming things.
yeah.
The practice of intimacy is more nuanced in just how I interact with everything and how I bring my own gifts to the table. Like I can be intimate with someone, share that intimacy of a conversation. Maybe it's just a, hey, nice shoes. Uh,
Yeah.
that's an intimacy in and of its own. And I can do that with wholeheartedness without attaching a a need for reciprocation
Mm,
from that.
mm-hmm,
And the
mm-hmm.
relationship anarchy has allowed me to gain that perspective because it's no longer, it takes the commodification, I think,
Mm,
out, or the consumption.
Yeah.
out of intimacy and
Yeah.
offers a collaboration with intimacy that was not available to me before when everything felt like it had to be a push pull or a consumer kind of society.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Such important insight, right? Again, look at how the systems are impacting our ability to love. And yeah, when
Hmm.
we live in a society that, you're, say, a piece of clothing or some sort of object breaks, the first thought we have is to, oh, throw it away and get a new one. How do you
Hmm.
think that impacts our relationships? If that is how we deal with other things in our life, that means those neuronal pathways are much more myelinated, which means they happen much faster. The electrical current of our thought goes much faster. And that's the pathway we go down. And then you have it
Hmm.
sort of built with all of these other relationships to objects. And then you have a human in your life. There's some sort of conflict. Ah, yeah, throw it away. There's more. I can just get another one. And like, how do you think
Right.
that, what do you think that results in as a society when that's how we treat other things? And of course, humans are not objects. However, there's a lot of psychodynamic theory that says people treat each other like objects, right? Where you're so self-absorbed in your own experience that you like feel yourself so much so, and other people are these object things that's not really the line of thought I went down much, but there's whole like lines of theory about that. And so if you look at the way we treat other objects in a consumer culture, yeah, look at this sort of pick up, toss, and discard sort of energy that
Hmm.
comes into our connections. And it's scary. It's scary the more we get into hyper individualistic spaces, the more the internet provides our ability. Like these days, if I want a recipe, I don't have to call my grandmother anymore. Like if I want to know how to change a tire, like I can just look it up, like I don't have to ask my brother, like so it's really
Hmm.
fascinating to think how these pieces are impacting us. And so I see relationship anarchy as trying to really live into that new world, that sort of like prefigurative politics of the values we want to embody are much more tending to caring for, slowing down, mending ruptures rather than throwing away people or objects, right? And so
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
hear that, and as you were saying, this embrace of love and feeling more of it, I feel like that's a slow exposure process. It's not like you flip a switch and you wake up and you're like, wow, love is abundant, as much as like some psychedelics can give us. You take the psychedelic, you're
I
like,
was gonna
whoa,
say.
I feel it. And so it's like, I think it's like a slow come up process, depending on how fast you jumped into the community. You know what I mean? If you jumped into a deep RA community immediately, you might be like, wow, this is a high dose psychedelic. But otherwise, I feel like it is that slow, like frame shifting that can be as with psychedelics, a difficult come up at first where you're like, wow, this is a lot. And so I'm curious for you, like, what were some of the difficulties of your come up into relationship anarchy?
Oh, let's see. Well, some of the difficulties, the first challenge that I hit was how to value my own desires without, like you just said, about consuming other
Mm,
people. Valuing my
mm-hmm,
own desires without consuming other people, bringing authenticity to what I wanted with a desire and a connection that fed both parties.
mm-hmm,
That was probably one of the biggest roadblocks to overcome. Some of the other difficulties is the limits that I placed upon myself in order
mm-hmm,
to have authentic connection.
mm-hmm,
Overcoming those limits, breaking them apart, dismantling them probably, and saying, well, it's not real unless X, Y, or Z happens.
mm-hmm,
I had to break apart those thoughts. Well, where does that come from? Why is that there? What are the values that you placed on that? And where how does that way of thinking limit you to from experiencing a more open and connected experience. And then that fear of not having control,
Mm.
that was a huge
Oh,
one.
yeah. Very real.
And also the fear of control.
Mm.
Early in my therapy, I had a therapist who helped me with some of my fears around situations where I felt uncomfortable.
Mm.
I was carrying a lot of fear around lack of control and a
Mm.
lack of agency in social situations.
Mm.
And so we explored where that fear came from. We explored why that fear was coming up. And then finally started to work on giving myself permission to control the situation with my own boundaries
Mm.
that don't impact other people or take away from other people.
Mm.
You can have boundaries without having rules.
Mm.
You can hold space without giving yourself up.
Mm.
That was a big challenge and a big leap forward in that experience. And the further I get along this, the more difficulties I overcome, the more I have the freedom of agency in order to define my relationships or not define the relationship as I choose.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about that choice. These difficulties are self-imposed, but looking at the roots of where they come from in our society and paying attention to how the tales of boogeyman
Mm.
have have created a difficulty for you.
Mm-hmm.
How do you dismantle your fears? Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's so nuanced when you talk
Mm-hmm.
about difficulties because you're talking about just the different places where everybody hits as an individual,
Mm.
and you can have a difficulty with one person and not with another. You can find a difficulty in yourself
Mm.
that challenges you. And I think that's a big part of relationship anarchy that's kind of fun
Yeah.
in its own way.
Yeah. Learning. Type 2.
Learning, yeah.
Type 2 fun. Mm-hmm.
Learning what difficulties are, learning where your limits are.
Yeah.
Um, do I want to overcome that limit or am I good where I'm at?
Mm-hmm.
Being aware of it. I mean, society will throw difficulties in your way no matter what. There's that aspect of not being recognized as a valid or sanctioned relationship.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah.
You could be in a relationship with somebody for 20 years, and because you don't hit X, Y, and Z mark,
Right.
your relationship is devalued,
Mm.
and the difficulties arise when you have an emergency situation.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And so, say, God forbid, somebody you love and care about passes away suddenly,
Mm.
and you're not set up as their
Right.
next of kin
Yep.
or their emergency contact. Suddenly, the government or whatever entity of power is in charge of that is calling their second cousin twice removed who's never met them
Right.
for to make funeral arrangements.
Right.
And you're
Mm-hmm.
cut out of the situation
Yeah.
entirely because
Absolutely.
you're not family. How do we overcome that difficulty? We overcome that difficulty with powers of attorney.
Mm-hmm.
We overcome that difficulty with living wills. We overcome that difficulty by creating a mindful foundation of connection that is not, it is possible to overcome, but it takes conscious effort to create those connections in a way that isn't automatically sanctified by the powers that be. What would happen to my cats if I
Mm.
didn't come home?
Yeah.
Um, Yeah,
No,
I thankfully I
no,
have a
not my fat
housemate.
cat. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a housemate next door who knows exactly my wishes and knows exactly what, she would take them. And would
Mhm.
I don't have to worry about that because I've set up a foundation to
Yeah.
overcome that difficulty.
I've done that
It's
with the podcast, quite literally. My partner Cooper is like,
yeah.
if I die, you have to produce all the episodes that are in the queue. Like here's my password to my computer. Here's the plan. So dear
Uh-huh.
listener, I have a plan for you, right? We got a plan for the cats, plan for the listeners. Yeah.
Exactly. And these are
Yeah.
all difficulties that I wasn't
Hmm.
expecting in practicing alternative relationships.
Yeah.
Because even in a primary based polyamorous relationship, you still have your one person, or maybe
Right.
your two people, your partners
Hmm.
who are there, who would pick up the pieces for you. Well, if you're a relationship anarchist and say a solo polyamorist, how do you do that for yourself?
Hmm.
And I find that more and more information is coming out, more and more podcasts are being
Yeah.
produced that are based on alternative solo relationships and supporting of ourselves and our community to overcome these difficulties that were unforeseen when not living in a nuclear family. And it's not an easy path, but it is definitely a path where you can overcome some difficulties that you never thought you had.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, building that muscle is not easy. That first time,
Hmm.
if you're running the marathon, that first mile is rough. That first time you try
Yeah,
to lift the weight, it is rough, right? And so in our
it is.
society, it is not built right now. Quite literally, our society capitalizes on our lack of emotional and relational skills because if we had more
Mhm.
of that, we would come together to dismantle some of the power structures, right? It's much better when
Correct.
the people don't know how to communicate with each other and don't have a lot of skills for that because then they're better cogs in the machine of the factories to support the higher powers, right? And so if you're trying to build these skills, which we're not taught in school, we don't spend 40-hour work weeks studying and getting deeper in, then yeah, it's going to be hard that first mile, those first couple of lifts. And it sounds like it's also something that you've gotten better at, deeper with. And obviously, there's always more to learn. Wow, what a humbling journey. And so I,
Yeah.
I, I hear the difficulties of that and also a bit of the joys, I imagine. So I love to always balance this question out with what are some of the joys you've experienced through that journey?
Oh, the joys are thankfully more bountiful than the difficulties.
Exactly. Yes, that's why I love this question. Yes, let's run with it.
The joys of it. Oh my gosh. There is an underlying security that as a anxious attachment person that I never thought I could find when I have a freedom of choice.
Mm,
Anxious attachment style used to be my foundation, constantly seeking security through the next person and the next person and the next person. Well, this person is going to give me what I need. Well, that person's going to give me what I need. When I give myself what I need, I'm not anxious. I can be attached or not attached, and I'm still okay.
mm,
And that security gives me a freedom that I didn't know was
yeah.
possible before. And it's exciting and heady and a crazy joy. Sometimes I just feel like just bursting out laughing just at how incredible it is just to have that. And that's probably my most overwhelming joy sometimes. Is I
Mm,
get to do whatever I want because I want to.
mm, mm-hmm.
And the other part of that is part of the ability to advocate for my needs without implied threat of disaster. I can say that I want something or need something, and even if the other person says I can't or I won't, it's not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
I can listen to that and I can say, okay, that's fine. I guess we won't do that together.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Yeah.
we'll do these other things together. Just like I said, the power of being able to accept no with grace and with love is part of the joy of relationship anarchy because it's not the end of the world when
Mm.
you hear no. And it's not also your everything and end all be all if you get yes.
Mm.
This isn't the only person that can give you what you need. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't the only person who can bring you what you want.
Yeah.
If that person goes away or if that situation changes, you have other outlets.
Mm-hmm.
You're not stuck with your kingdom in pieces
Right.
and having to rebuild because you're the one who's built your own kingdom. It's an abundance that I
Mm.
hadn't expected before.
Mm.
And then another joy I think that extends also to the people in my life is being able to honor and hold space with our individual truths because we're not carrying an agenda
Mm.
of escalation.
Sure. Yeah.
We are able to honor that space and hold that for one another without devaluing the experience in the process. I have a very hard and fast rule that I have no interest in living with anybody else
Yeah, I hear
or
that.
having anybody
Yeah.
live with me.
Yeah.
And I bent that rule a little bit for my best friend who needed a place to stay for a month while he got his life together in a way to be able to move on to the next stage of his journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, I respect you enough and you respect me enough that I think we can live together for a month and have it work out fine. And it has. It's worked out great. There's
Mm-hmm.
a timeline.
Yeah.
The honor came in being able to offer that to him without an agenda of, well, this, if you live with me, then that means that we're back together again, or,
Mm.
you know what I mean? There's,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there's,
Mm-hmm.
there's, um, there was a lack of agenda. There was just that honor in saying, okay, this person I care about needs something from me. I can offer that to them for X amount of time and it's a open flowing experience to be able to have this time together
Yeah.
and then we both move on to the next stages of our lives without it really having to have an agenda behind it.
Mm-hmm.
uh, but I still have my hard and fast rule that I'm not living with any romantic partners.
I hear you. It's important for the revolution. A lot of privilege,
Yes.
and I'm so grateful for the ability to do that.
Oh, so much, so much. And I
Mm-hmm.
do definitely value that privilege quite a bit because I do recognize that there are a lot of people who can't make
Oh
that
yeah.
choice, who don't have that ability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember.
But
Yeah, go ahead.
but that's another joy of relationship anarchy. It's
Totally.
isn't it? It's like that joy of saying it doesn't mean that we're better. It means that we're just different. And we can help each other by recognizing the strengths in both positions.
Right. Yeah. Because it's a power over model if you look at other cultures and say, you're doing it wrong, I have the way, right? That's a power
Hmm.
over controlling model. And so that's not what we're trying to do, right? And so creating space for the diversity and all the different ways that people want to show up, that's a part of their freedom and ability to choose and their
True.
empowerment with all of that. And for me, like we said, women couldn't have credit cards. They couldn't have bank accounts in their own name until the 70s, right? So I hold that with a lot of knowing historically and saying like, yeah, I'm going to use my own bank account for my own studio apartment. And that's a really
Yep.
important piece of what I want to explore with my time on this life because a lot of women didn't have that opportunity. And so for me, I want to do that. That is a part of my politics with relationship anarchy, is to experience the psychological headspace that even creates. I remember Virginia Woolf used to talk about a woman having a room of her own, right? Just a room,
Yes.
and the psychological transformation that could be. And so, yeah, picking it up in our modern age, very curious. A studio apartment of your own. What does that create? How do you
Hmm.
experience the world in very different paradigms? And so I hear you with that very, very
Yes.
deeply, and think it's something that I share resonance for prioritizing with my life. And I hear the ways that you've stepped into flexibility to support your community when that is needed, right? Ongoing evaluation of your values, and when something's in alignment or not, and the ways that this practice has brought so much abundance into your life of intimacy and opportunity. Because what I understand of relationship anarchy is it's about that mutuality. We're not in these dyadic connections where we're like expecting the other person to meet all of our world, right? And so when we're not in that paradigm, we're able to, fat cat, just crawling straight by the mic. uh, when we're not in those dyadic worlds, it's about meeting of mutuality. You can say like, hey, this
Hmm.
is how I'd like to relate. They say, yes, that's great for me too. Great, we'll meet there. And if they say
Hmm.
no, whether it's you, me, or that other person, that's okay. I support you finding those desires with other people. What are the ways we can relate together? And so that creates so much freedom, as you said, to do the things that you want to do, and holding that balance between our freedom and the community care, to like walk both with that hand in hand. And it creates a lot of space of mutuality to come together through that,
Hmm.
which is such a beauty. And I'm curious for you, the last question, which is, what do you wish other people knew about relationship anarchy? Given all this time, the wisdom you've had to sit with
Oh,
this practice, what do you wish other people knew?
well, it's a challenging thing to say because I know for myself sometimes when someone would say this to me that you can choose what you want in life and still be valid and still have your life be a valid expression of your individual desires. And that is such a double-edged sword because there are times in my life when I did not feel like I had a choice
Mm,
because I had not set myself up into a position to give myself that choice.
mm,
And so I know that when I say you can choose and still be valid, that does come from a position of some privilege because of the work that I've done and because of the choices that I've made. That choice is not a magic pill that makes everything amazing. That
mhm,
choice is hard. That choice is a sacrifice sometimes.
mhm,
That choice can also be terrifying,
mm.
but it's still a choice that I want people to understand they have.
Yeah.
You really can, even if you have to work 3 times harder than the other person, even if it means moving away from your family or maybe the
Yeah.
place that you grew up. You still do have a choice in
Mm,
order to make that happen. And I want people to understand that that's valid, even if it scares somebody, even if somebody says, but I don't want you to.
mm.
Making that choice can mean hurting people, it can mean scaring people, but it's still your individual choice.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of that relationship anarchy that I want people to understand that the path may be hard,
Mm,
but that individual reward of living your life on your own terms is worth it. The other thing that I want people, gosh, I wish I could make people understand this, is that all forms of love and pleasure are sacred.
mm,
And holding that sacred space for one another is one of our greatest, most beautiful gifts that we can give to the world. That sacred form of love and pleasure and delight is what makes life really worth living.
Yeah.
And you can have that for yourself without denying it for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a sign on my front door. It's a heart with a rainbow that says, "Love is love."
Mm.
And that every day is that love. It's a verb, it's an active,
Yeah.
working thing that we do every day in order to bring delight and joy and beauty into our lives, onto our planet, into our culture.
Mm-hmm.
That is not a finite resource. It is infinite and can be
Yeah.
expressed in so many beautiful ways.
Uh,
So that's what I really wish that people just knew, like deep in
mm-hmm.
their souls, that I wish people knew that they had choice and that they could be in love and that they can live in love.
Mm. Mm. Well, you did such a beautiful job of bringing that love into the podcast space today. I'm really
Thank
grateful that you
you.
could bring all of that wisdom into the space and share all of that with the listeners.
I am very, very happy to.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing journey, and I
Oh,
hope that
yes.
it really helps other people see that their choices are valid as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Because I think when you're following what your alignment, the things that bring you joy, your authenticity, there is that individual joy for it. And I also think that's a collective joy because when you are your authentic self, you're in your fullest expression of that. I fundamentally believe that we're social beings that thrive when we are in deeper connection and happy
Hmm.
connection with one another. They're rewriting the theories on evolution to be more collective because we needed each other to survive. And so as we get into more spaces of realizing that other differences between us are not necessarily a threat as much as it was, in times where resources were more scarce as we were developing as a species and when we had much more fear of anything that was different, and we're still learning to get out of that. But I truly do believe that the more we are in connection, the happier we are. And so when we follow our authentic self, I think it's easier to come into connection because like we talked about earlier, right? The internal and the external. If you have that internal love, it's much easier to
Hmm.
give it to other people. And so if you're
Hmm.
battling internally, like maybe in my younger years, like, oh God, I'm queer and I want multiple relationships. I'm so wrong. I'm so wrong. I'm so wrong. How are you supposed to extend love to other people when internally you're going through this whole battle of self-judgment, right? And so
Hmm.
the more you can step into love and authentic expression of yourself, I think it's much easier to give that to other people. And so that individual opportunity to come into alignment, I think, is also a collective opportunity. And the more that we allow that space for ourselves, the more we allow it for other people, I do think that we're going to start dancing more in harmony, in my belief. And so I'm so grateful when people like you do come onto the show to speak about the journey, to speak about the messiness, the vulnerability, the lessons that come through that, and the acknowledgement that it's only just the beginning, right? There's still so much more.
There's still so much more to do.
I
It never
know.
ends, and that is just the excitement of
Of
all of it
course,
is
of course,
that thrill of what's next?
of
What else can we
course.
do? What,
Totally.
especially right at this moment with our world in so much turmoil
Eek.
and
Yeah.
our society, and it feels like a battle to the death. But if it's a battle to the death, then what I want to see die is that division and hatred and
Mm.
fear. And what I want to see survive is love and interconnection and experience of community and how we can support one another if we have to battle, let's battle for that to win.
Yeah. Well, Jezebel, I want to check in and see if there's anything else you want to share with the listeners. I know you shared so much wisdom. Otherwise, I have a closing question for us.
Okay. Um, I want everybody to encourage everybody to just open up and consume as much knowledge and information as you can of all of the amazing people who are doing so much work
Mm.
around dismantling our limitations, and seek them out, read their books, listen to their
Yeah.
podcasts, talk with them, be out, be loud, be proud,
Mm.
and to keep love in your hearts and joy in your mind and move forward.
Mm. Ah, so beautifully said. Yes. All right. Yeah, so good. Well, as we come towards the end of our time, I'll take a deep breath with
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
And the last question that I ask every guest on the show is, what is one thing that you wish other people knew was more normal?
I wish people knew that it was more normal to love in abundance than it is to be closed off and frightened of loving. Our natural state is to want and desire and need connection. I hope that through our global community, through our global connection, through our world, that we can understand that you deserve to be loved, you deserve to be celebrated, and you deserve to be supported by other people who are in the same situation, and maybe there's some nuances that make us a little different, but you're not alone.
Yeah.
You're not isolated,
Mm.
and you can experience love, even if it's just loving yourself and who
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah.
It's an infinite loop, and there is no end to it.
Mm. 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 So beautifully said. And I'm so grateful that you were able to embody that by coming onto the show and sharing that love with all the listeners, inviting them into that space, into that open heart, right? You did such a beautiful job at that today.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. I really appreciate the honor and the privilege it is to
Ah,
be on your show
so much fun. Oh my
and
goodness.
to enjoy this, to enjoy this,
Mm,
to enjoy this space with you. Thank you
mm-hmm.
so much for the time and platform.
Of course, truly. I couldn't do this part of the show, the series, without people like you who trust me to come onto the show and to share their wisdom and to be so vulnerable. So truly, thank you.
You're welcome. Very welcome.
If you enjoyed today's episode, then leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. And head on over to modernanarchypodcast.com to get resources and learn more about all the things we talked about on today's episode. I want to thank you for tuning in, and I will see you all next week.